afraid to turn out the lights? Is there something you're scared of? What's there out in the dark? Make sure to keep all your windows locked. Do you surrender? You try to stay awake. These walls you can't escape. Here's one for the lonely hearts, for the ones that fear the dark. You better run out of here. Bet you can't look the other way. Here's one for the broken road. That's the only one you know. You better run out, truth or dare. Get me out, take me anywhere but here. Oh, anywhere but here. Wanting something good to come, waiting for. Do you lie awake at night? Are you afraid to turn out the lights? Is there something you're scared of? What's there out in the dark? Make sure to keep all your windows locked. Do you surrender?
Hello and welcome to PHP Alive and Kicking. This is episode, and I don't know what the number is now.
25.
25. Thank you. There you go. Great start. I'm Mike. My co-host is Chris.
Hello.
This podcast is brought to you by PHP Architect and made better by our partners at PHPScore. More about them later, if I can put my teeth in and I can speak. I do have a slight defence. I'm just getting over a really nasty cold. So I'm still bunged up and still can't talk, apparently. We explore the developments in PHP and what it's like to earn a living in PHP today. This is a live recording, so if you are in our Discord channel, which we will bring up now.
Hold on.
There you go. If you're in our Discord channel, you can join in, post questions for our guests. The Discord isn't just for when we're on live. You can hang out in there all week long. There's all sorts of conversations. There's quite an interesting conversation just before we went live going on in there. So do join us. There's all sorts of cool people in there. And that is the Discord channel. Sorry, I'm losing my complete train of thought here. YouTube, if you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. We also run a monthly magazine for all around PHP and other techs. We do have a code for all our listeners to get the first 3 months free of a year's digital subscription. And that is a live 3. So head over to our website and use that code to get those first 3 episodes for free. Alongside our development work and our magazine, we also run PHP Tech every year. It's in Chicago this year. Not long now. It's catching up. It's not far off now. So yeah, that's going to be happening. Alongside PHP Tech, we've actually running for the first time JS Tech, which is a conference dedicated to JavaScript that will be running alongside PHP Tech in the same hotel, rooms adjacent. So yes, we are mixing PHP developers with JavaScript developers. What could go wrong?
Everything. Not only that, we were also, if you subscribe to one, you get to go to the other one too.
That is true. That is true.
We're not holding tickets at the door.
We've also got our swag store, which you can head over. There's pretty some cool stuff over there, t-shirts, caps and cups and things. That is store.phparch.com. So head over and check out what we've got over there.
So if you put in the order for the t-shirt that we won yet?
Nope.
Nor me.
No. Still haven't done it yet. One day I'll remember to do it. The only time I remember about it is when we're on the show, and I can't really order it while we're on the show. So yeah, we will do soon. Right, enough of us rambling, because these people don't really come to watch us ramble on about rubbish, do they?
No.
We bumped into someone. We went to PHP UK a couple of weeks ago. Had an absolute blast. Met loads of people, and today's guest is one of the speakers who has kindly agreed to come on and somehow navigate us through all the nonsense that we get up to on this show. We might actually have a steady ship this time.
I mean, it's possible.
So who have we got?
So we have the wonderful Sebastian Bergmann. Hello.
Hello, Sebastian.
Hello.
Now I have a question. Why have the names come back?
Hang on.
See, that is because whoever develops this app that we use to do this live stream and recording, they heard us before we went live. Their product, mentioning that they probably don't test their product because of all the bugs that we noticed just in the last 10-15 minutes.
Yep.
And they listened in on us violating our privacy and went along and fixed those bugs.
There we go.
Perfect explanation.
It is the only possible explanation that makes sense.
So it's probably one that doesn't make sense, but
anything's possible.
Oh, only we knew someone that knows a lot about.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me know if you find one. I've been trying to figure out this testing thing for 26, 27 years now.
I mean, there's this one thing I use called PHP unit. It seems pretty good. It's pretty stable, good at testing. So for anybody that doesn't know, Sebastian actually wrote PHP unit. So, Sebastian, we always start with the same question to everybody we bring on for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get into PHP?
How did I get into PHP? Yes, that was a long time ago. Let's start there. That was in 1998. And to give you a perspective, where was little Sebastian in his life at that time? It was the time for me between I had just finished my military replacement service, the so-called civil service in Germany. Back then, we still had the draft. So you either had to go to the military for about a year and as an alternative for a little bit longer do civil replacement service. And I worked at a hospital. And after that concluded and university started for me, I had a couple of months of time and I decided to do an internship at a computer science research institute. And just because I thought that this would be a brilliant use of the time and I could learn something and whatever, but I arrived there on the first day, the person responsible for me went on a 3-month research trip somewhere else, and I was on my own and had basically nothing to do. So fortunate timing that I was contacted then by someone I knew from the Amiga demo scene. So I grew up learning programming on the Amiga. Got an Amiga 500 in 1990 and an Amiga 1200 not so much later, basically when that machine came out. And I was always fascinated by the intros, the cracked rows, and the demos that people did on those machines. And I wanted to be able to do that myself. So I dabbled a bit in that and got to know a couple of people who were a lot better at that than me. So I quickly stopped doing that. But what I found out that I was really good at was writing software as extensions for mailbox software, bulletin board system software that was used by all the, I mean, it's so long in the past that I'm comfortable enough saying that, but by all the bulletin boards where the Amiga cracked games were traded, basically, all of them were using the same bulletin board system software, and most of them used software that I wrote to extend that. And then at that time, when I was doing the internship and I was bored, someone contacted me and said, hey, I used to be a graphics artist on the Amiga and you did some coding. And to me, as someone who is not into programming, all programming is the same. And I'm now doing internet. Whatever that may mean, right? I'm doing internet. So what he meant was he was doing front page and Photoshop and doing websites for his clients. And that was good enough for a while, like the skills that he had as an artist for doing that. But then came the moment when he needed something that happened with business logic on the server, and he was not the right person for that. So he reached out to me because for him, that is exactly the same thing as doing extensions for mailbox software on the Amiga, because one thing is programming, the other thing is programming, right? And I had no idea how to do server-side programming. So I asked what programming languages are there for that. And he said, well, you have the choice between Perl and PHP on the server. So I tried my hands at Perl for 1 or 2 hours and then stopped doing that because I was not compatible with that language. I forgot the details, but I tried PHP and was able to learn enough PHP in a weekend to build the application that he needed built for his customer. And then I filed that away in my memory as, okay, this was nice, interesting. So this is how server-side programming works. Maybe that will become relevant later. And I kept doing things like that, and then subscribed to the mailing list, started asking questions, eventually started answering questions, started contributing to the PHP documentation, translating documentation from English to German, fixing small issues in the English documentation, found at some point a bug in PHP itself or something that annoyed me enough to look into how PHP is implemented. And I found, oh, this is implemented in C. I know C, so now I need to figure out how C and the language ecosystem around C, build systems, etc., work on Linux, and fix the bug. And that was around the time that development started in earnest on PHP 5. And by then I was at university and learned about object-oriented programming and was part of a research group on programming language design, and started discussing ideas that I got with some people that were working more deeply on PHPScore than I ever did, and gave them ideas, discussed ideas, and contributed to design of things like Reflection API and other related things that I needed to implement PHP unit in the proper way.
So you started on the second system I had, which was the Amiga 1200. The first one I had was the ZX Spectrum 48K. And me and my dad literally sat in the kitchen and soldered that one together. That's how old computing was for me. And it turns out that I think 30 years ago in 1995, we were at the same conference to do with Amiga.
Could be.
Which, I mean, that's small world. Two people from two different countries start in the same way and end up in the same language. So,
I mean, I remember being a teenager, and I remember having the Amiga as a teenager, and my first experience of coding. Now, I can't remember if it was on the Amiga or whether it was on something at school, but I wrote a really simple maths test for the Amiga, which had about 5 questions. It just sort of pinged if you're right, or made another sound if you're wrong, and then showed the correct answer. But for me, unfortunately, I didn't realise. I don't really remember, but I because I'm dyslexic, a lot of people were telling me that I need to go into sort of a more of a labour type of job, building work and things like that. So I left computers behind, but I've come back to them eventually, and again, found PHP, and a bit like yourself, I tried PHP and realised it was just really easy to learn quite quickly.
Sarah in Discord, we all know Sarah, says Sebastian on Perl. I was not compatible with that language. I mean, honestly, I don't think many people are these days compatible with Perl. It's one of those languages that I just don't get. It just doesn't sit in the way that PHP does, and JavaScript is a totally different paradigm. So that path sort of led you to PHP unit and writing PHP unit.
Yeah, because I started writing more and more software in PHP, and soon realized I want to be able to, funny thought, test the software that I built and ensure that it actually does what it is supposed to be doing. Because I was very fortunate to have a professor at university who really early on, because he was he knew Erich Gamma and Kent Beck and others who created JUnit, like the two of them, and made it popular. And we at university started really early on using that. And I found it an interesting concept of, it's part of my responsibility as a developer, not only to write the software that actually runs whatever it is supposed to run, but also write the tests that verify that the software does what it is supposed to be doing, and not delegate that to somebody else. And I found that fascinating. And I searched for a solution for that in PHP, because to me, by that point, it was clear, like, PHP is a language that I enjoy working with, and that is very well suited for the kind of things that I needed to do and wanted to do. So I wanted to have a test framework like JUnit for that. And clearly, I cannot be the first person on the planet wanting that. So somebody must have already built that, right? So I started searching for that. And this was a time when version control, or the predominant version control system, was CVS. And the open source code hosting platform was SourceForge. Before, it was a place for malware and ads and whatever it has become since then. So on SourceForge, there was a project named PHPUnit. And for a couple of minutes, I was happy. Yes, somebody has built that. And then I tried using it, and I could not get it to work. I mean, it's still there because projects are never deleted on SourceForge, right? But I tried contacting the author, but never got a reply. And then eventually I started building what later became PHPUnit. But for about a year, I did not want to share that with the world, because I was still hoping that somebody else who is much better qualified than me to do that, to create a project like that. And then at some time, it became just too painful to not have the thing that I was using in my project as a real project that is out there somewhere, and others can use that, can provide feedback and benefit from that. That's when, because somebody gave me write access to cvs.php.net and allowed me to create new projects. So I just put it there because I couldn't put it on SourceForge.
So was that Sarah? Can we blame Sarah for that?
You know, you can blame Sarah for a lot of things, but I don't think that she is to blame for that.
I mean, I'm only blaming her because she's talking about kids do weird shit, and back when we were doing Perl. And John, our boss, is also talking in there about how he started with web development with Perl. And he says, I guess I was compatible, and then points out the old database access. You didn't have field names back then. You just had to know that data 0 was the ID. Yes. I've worked on projects like that. It's...
Well, on that note, I think we'll just hear from our sponsors and have a quick break. So we'll be back in just a moment.
Thank you to our partners at PHPScore.com. Every app builds up technical debt over time. It's the price we pay for shipping new features and moving fast. When we build up too much of it, though, it can start to impact how we work. Team velocity suffers, bugs become more frequent and take longer to fix, and everyone starts to get a little frustrated. The key to managing debt is to measure it. A credit score can help you understand how well you're managing your financial debt, and now there's a credit score for your technical debt. Go to phpscore.com to get a free technical debt score and monitoring for all of your PHP applications today.
Thank you, PHP Score. I think this was quite a...
Yes. Yes. I also want the answer to the other one.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't predate her as in the meaning of being on the face of this planet, but I think as far as the PHP project is concerned, I think I was involved before that. Yes, for whatever that matters. I don't think it does.
So, Sebastian, to PHP UK, you were talking about a concept that to me was literally mind-blowing. The idea of unit testing event-sourced or event-stormed applications, which I went on and implemented on an app that I'm building and loved it.
Mhm.
Firstly, you've got an article about that, haven't you?
I didn't catch the last part.
You've got an article about that on your blog, haven't
Yes, I have an article about that on my blog. So that's something that I try to do for a while now, that when I give a presentation for the first time, like I did now with From Events to Insights at the PHP UK conference, that I have an article ready on my blog when I give the presentation for the first time, so that I can point people to that article. Sorry, Sarah, you somehow asked for that. Yes.
I'm currently looking for that article. I shall find it in a moment and make sure it goes out with the show notes. The concept that you were presenting of the idea of being able to do given, when, then directly in PHP unit tests. Explain the mechanism behind that and how that's actually coming from PHP unit, because I think that was the important part, drawing it from the additional data.
So I'd like to take a step back for a moment and very briefly introduce the concept of, or talk about the concept of event-driven or event-sourced systems. And that is a way of building systems where the source of truth is not a typical relational data model, a typical CRUD data structure that you have that only represents the current state of your world, and you do not know how you got to the current state, but instead you keep a record of everything that is relevant to your domain as it happens as an immutable event. And the hello world example of that is that of a bank account, which is at some point in time opened, and then transactions are happening. Money is deposited, money is transferred, money is withdrawn. And for every thing that happens, which is an event, you record that event. And then on the one hand, you have an audit trail out of the box and for free, because you can just look at this event stream, this record of events that have happened, and see what has happened when and why. And you can reconstruct the current state of a bank account, for example, just by looking at those events. And not only show this is the current balance, but this is how we got to the current balance. And now, I came across that way of building software over 10 years ago, or over 15 years ago by now, like a long time ago. And when I first came across that, I realized, hey, this really helps to think about a system, and this is very elegant, and it helps solve a lot of problems. But in my mind, immediately had this big problem. But how in the world am I going to test a system like that? Because this must be a lot more complicated and complex and tedious and cumbersome, and insert your favorite adjective here. Until I realized that actually the opposite is the truth, because it makes, at least for me, testing a lot easier. Because instead of oh, how do I prepare my CRUD style database? How do I bring it into a state that I can run my test? And how do I clean it up afterwards? And how do I figure out by looking at the database whether or not what I want to happen has happened? I can express my intent in my test in a readable, maintainable, and straightforward manner that is aligned with the rest of my architecture and design of my application. And this is where the given when then metaphor comes into play that you mentioned earlier. I can just say, okay, in the context of this test, for whatever it is that I currently want to test, given that these events have happened in the past, when I perform this command, when I execute this action, whatever you want to call it, then I expect that these other events have now been recorded. And then you can abstract that away, extend the test framework, in this case, PHP unit, adapt it to your project and to your framework or whatever you want to call it, how you interact with events, and have the language from your tests where you call the 3 methods given when then, translate that into the relevant code that needs to be run underneath the test to make the test possible. And depending on the context and scope of your test, like for example, if you are in a unit test, you do not want to use a real event store. You do not want to use a real persistence layer. The same given when then calls are there translated into the creation of test stubs and mock objects to simulate the event system. But you can reuse the same test code in a different context and have the given when then calls there be translated into, for an integration test or an end-to-end test, into code that creates a real event store, uses the real event system and things like that.
Yeah, and that whole process does make the tests literally the contract that they're supposed to be in the first place. We currently have Derek in the comments asking when he's coming on, and we're trying to arrange a podcast with Derek at the same time as talking to Sebastian.
Yeah, the chat is a bit confusing. I try to focus on your faces, but then I see the chat messages come up that is. And I decree that we use Sarah's suggestion and make and call it the BS time, the before Sarah time.
Yep.
Just for fun.
Yeah.
Why not? Why not?
Sarah is definitely not available next Tuesday. I mean,
That's right, Sarah. We weren't asking you to come on the show again. We've had you twice.
No. We haven't recovered from the last chaos.
So this time system also translates to this podcast as a BS before Sarah came on the podcast and after Sarah came on the podcast.
Well, there isn't a before because she was our first guest.
Okay.
There is technically one episode before Sarah, but that's just me and Mike giving our stories.
Before
no one's
the
interested
second
in those.
coming of Sarah on the podcast and after.
Yes.
Yeah. She was the first one of this year.
Okay.
Yes.
She brought us into the. I didn't mean to.
So Sarah says we're rude.
Yeah. Well.
So yes,
You're a big girl. You can handle it.
I mean, we did introduce her as the loudest voice in PHP. So the way that those tests read, once you've established that, it literally gives you the contract of what your application goes on. And by being able to write like that, it makes it so easy to then see from the PHP doc output exactly what went on. And that concept makes it so easy to then just pass that to customers, the next person that needs to see it, and go,
Yeah.
is this what we intended?
The short answer to that would be yes. The slightly longer answer would be it was a journey. So my journey started with I want to be able to have test code that is readable, understandable to the people working on the tests, on the code of such a system. And then the more I was getting into collaborative modeling techniques like event storming and things like that, I wanted to get a visual documentation out of running the tests that goes full circles to, if you will, the input of the actual writing of code, which is a lot of sticky notes on a wall that are color coded, and then you have orange stickies, which are events, and then you have green stickies for read models and things like that. And I wanted to get in that visual language documentation that is generated from running the tests. So this is what I built as an extension for PHP unit that is project specific for the example project that I used in my presentation and that I use in the article. So this is not something that is a generic extension for PHP unit that you can just install and use in your project. But it shows the idea. And I think it's easy to adapt what I've published in this example project to specific projects. I think it's harder to turn that into something that is generic enough that it would be useful to distribute as an open source project. Right? And so the idea is I can do a collaborative modeling session like event storming, get a lot of stickies, get a shared understanding of all the stakeholders of what is supposed to be built, use that as input for the development, write my tests in such a fashion that I get visual documentation that uses that visual language as output from running the tests, that I can then compare to my photos of the event storming wall to figure out, did I actually build what I was supposed to be building? Like that is one way that can be used, but it can also be used to quickly show someone, hey, for this command, these are the tests that I have. This is the visual documentation. Does this match what you have in mind? Yes or no? Where do we need to iterate? And of course, if you collect all of that data from all the tests that you run, you get a map of your software system through the lens of events. And you see, these are all the events in my system. This event is emitted here, and it is consumed here, here, and here. And this is a really helpful source of information for developers that that need to work on the software and need to change something, because this gives them the canonical source of truth, which parts of the system are affected when I make a change over here. Like I change how that event is emitted or how that event looks like or whatever. Which other parts of the system do I need to keep in mind when I make a change there? And that is really helpful.
Yeah. And that map that it produces is literally, by the time you've done the whole app, so easy to refer back to and just go, there, that's what it is, and it just flows straight through. I mean, when I put it in on the app that I've been working on, it at the moment it's only got about 50 events, but those 50 events are interlaced around like 20 or 30 different places, and seeing that map also gave me the opportunity to go, do you know what, this is doing more than it should for each event, let's make 2 events out of it. And you could see an easier pathway, and just by having that visual output made it so easy to understand the whole process. And the fact that you can even get that out of PHP unit is impressive. And I don't know of another framework that can do that. I know there probably is, but I don't know of one in other languages that you can actually use that information to produce that.
I would say that this is possible in every test framework, because every test framework that I know, no matter which programming language it is for, you write the tests in that language, and you can do anything you want in that code that you have in your tests. Now, whether or not that is clean and elegant and actually usable and maintainable, that may be a different story. But what we talk about here right now is one of the things that I had in mind when we implemented the event system for PHP unit itself, which we introduced in PHP unit 10, which completely changed all the code inside of PHP unit that is responsible for output, be it output that you see on the console when PHP unit is running to report progress, to report results, report failures, and so on, or be it output in the form of log files. All of that is now based on event system, and the event system in PHP unit, that is read only. So nothing is controlled through the events. PHP unit just emits an event for everything that is relevant in the context of running tests. There are about, I have no idea how many events there are, dozens. Like for anything that is meaningful, the execution of a test started, the execution of a test stopped, PHP unit as a whole started, PHP unit as a whole has stopped. A test stub was created, a mock object was created, whatever. You name it, we have an event for it. And PHP unit itself subscribes to the events that are relevant to create, for instance, the output on the console. But you can write extensions for PHP unit, subscribe to these events, and if you want, completely change the output that you get from PHP unit. This is, for example, what extensions for PHP unit like PEST do. Yeah, PEST is an extension for the PHP unit test runner. Among other things, it also extends PHP unit in other ways, but part of PEST is a piece of code that subscribes to events to produce its output, because they want different output than what PHP unit produces out of the box. And such an extension can tell PHP unit, I take over control of the output. Please do not produce any output. Only I will produce output. And that's what they do. Alternatively, and this is what the extension does that I showed in my presentation in London, is that you can write an extension that subscribes to some events and does not produce output by printing to the console, but by generating a file in a directory. In the case of that extension, that is a bunch of PDF files with the visual documentation.
Yeah. So when I implemented it, I slightly changed the extension that you were doing so that it was outputting Mermaid directly as MDs, because then they're committable and you can see them in GitHub. But the principle just gives you so many avenues to go from there. And I've been toying with the idea of how could you take the concept to non-event sourced apps and looking at how does that work. Could you use PHP units testing to give you a map of an application that isn't event sourced? And the answer appears to be yes. It's a bit messy at the moment to try and get it to work because you're reliant on good, clean segregation. But in theory, it's possible. And it's quite an interesting concept to look at, going from just text on a screen that says yes or no, it passed, to a documentation that's alive that tells you how the app performs and how does it do its job. And it's almost like testing's a good thing.
Yeah, we might be onto something there.
Before we go to the next question, I just want to say, anyone that is watching live, you can pop into Discord and put any questions to Sebastian. I'm sure he'll be happy to answer anything that you put in there.
I mean, I'm sort of half expecting Nuno to ask another extension for Pest in a minute. Nuno is in our Discord and does occasionally watch the podcast.
I noted that PHP Unit 13 is just recently released.
Yes.
Back in February, was it? I've noted down.
First Friday of February.
Yeah, and so what's new? What's been brought new to the table in there?
I could be really try to be witty and say the new thing about PHP Unit 13 is that there is something new. But unless you are familiar with how PHP Unit's major versions normally work, that would not be funny. So let me explain. So usually the first release of a new major version is rather boring, as in there are no or only very few new features. Why is that? Because the .o release, which is always on the first Friday of February, is the annual opportunity to get rid of technical debt, remove all the code for features that have been deprecated for quite a while, clean up under the hood, bump the PHP version requirement, things like that. And this .o release lays the foundation for feature development throughout the year. On the first Friday of April, June, August, October, and December are the feature releases, and they usually are the ones that bring new features. This year, it was a bit different because the 13.0 release has a couple of new features. Nothing, well, that's not true. There are some significant changes in there. So, for example, there are a couple of new, 8 to be exact, assertions that deal with arrays, comparing arrays for identity and equality from very, very strict, like the order of the elements matters, the key value relationship matters, and the triple equal sign operator needs to be used, all the way to the other end of the spectrum where it's very loose. The order of the elements does not matter. The key value relationship does not matter. Basically, the keys do not matter. And we use a double equal sign operator to only compare for equality and not a type safe comparison. And if you multiply that out, you arrive at 8 different assertions. And they have been, like, some of them have been requested for quite a while. Like I remember Jordi from the Composer project asking me about one of those 8. I forgot which one it was a couple of years ago, and I never really got around to doing that. And then somebody else asked for something else, and then I sat down with Jordi and Theo Fidri at SymphonyCon in Amsterdam last year. And we discussed this for a bit, and then arrived at, okay, if we are going to do this, then we need all 8 of these. And because if we only implement 1 or 2, then people will complain and say, hey, this is missing, and why is this and not that? So I implemented all 8 of them. I would say the major change or major addition, improvement in 13 is 2 new parameter matchers when working with mock objects. So in the past, prior to PHP Unit 10, we had the parameter matcher that allowed you to say, okay, I want this method, or I expect this method to be called 3 times, and the first time it needs to be called with these parameters, the second time with these parameters, the third time with these parameters. But the sequence was fixed and strict. And sometimes the order in which these expected method calls happen is not relevant. And having then only the option of having this fixed order becomes a maintenance burden when you do a refactoring of the code you're testing, and suddenly the events or method calls happen in a different order. And the test fails, although it should not fail because the test is not interested at all in the order, but it is because that's the only way the API supported it. And that was one of many, many, many limitations and frustrations with the old API we had prior to PHP Unit 10. And the old API was unfixable without a backward compatibility break. And believe it or not, back then I arrived at the conclusion that the minimal amount of backward compatibility break would just be to delete this method, because changing it, like keeping it, fixing it, and breaking backward compatibility would have been a lot harder when it comes to migration, because it does not fail in obvious ways in certain situations, and you would get false positives or false negatives. And I was not able to figure that out. Maybe I'm just too stupid, I don't know. But back then I did not have a solution. So I deleted it and put on the roadmap finding a replacement for that functionality, but never got around to implementing that. And then at the end of last year, I was doing a training, and one of the attendees of my training said, well, I'm missing this functionality here. I really want to test this, but I can't because this feature was removed and there is no replacement, or I'm unable to find the replacement. What gives? Please explain. And then I explained the situation, and she said, I understand. I'll use this ugly workaround I found on Stack Overflow, but I'm not happy with that. And then a week after the training, she sent me a pull request and said, I think I have found a solution. And it was a solution. And it is the solution that is now in 13.0. And this is, like I said, coming back to what I said a couple of minutes ago, this is unusual that PHP, like a .0 release, has new features. Because usually it's just clean up, technical debt, PHP version bump, things like that.
Okay.
So the exciting thing about 13.0 is that there was something exciting about it. Because normally it's intended to be boring.
Okay, I understand. Okay. Well, thank you for going through that. What have you got planned for this year? What sort of features are coming into it over the next 12 months that you're allowed to say?
The way that you phrase the questions, what have I planned, that insinuates that I do have a plan.
Okay. Is there anything that you know you're going to be putting in the next 12
So I
months?
can tell you what I worked on over the last couple of days, which I definitely had not planned to do. But I woke up one morning last week and thought, screw it. I've been annoyed and frustrated by this limitation for 10 plus years. So I finally want to tackle that. And I got most what I wanted to accomplish done in about a day. And then I needed only 2 more days to clean it up and make it actually work. And by now you're wondering, what the heck is he talking about? So I rewrote the code that serializes code coverage information to a file, merges multiple of those files into a single code coverage file, and then generates a report from that, while solving all the bugs that have accumulated in that area of PHP units code coverage functionality over the last 10 plus years. So there is a command line tool in addition to PHP unit that is called PHPCOV, which can merge code coverage information from multiple PHP unit runs. And this is useful in at least 2 scenarios. One, you have so many tests that you want to run them in parallel using wrappers around PHP unit like paratest or paraunit to just improve test execution speed. That works well. But when you want a single unified code coverage report for all your tests and you run the tests in parallel, you need to merge the code coverage information from all the runs into a single one. And that merging was not very robust because the serialized format that was used was not very good. I hope it is a lot better now. I got really promising feedback from the maintainers of paraunit and paratest already, and some feedback from some other people as well. And that might sound boring, but it makes something as essential as code coverage reporting in certain scenarios finally robust and actually usable. Yeah, another scenario where you need that is if you have operating system specific code paths in your application. So for example, you are an open source project, you need to support, for whatever reason, Windows. So you also run your tests on Windows, but you have certain lines of code that are only run on Windows. Now, when you run your tests on Linux, those lines of code are not run, so they are read in your code coverage report. If you run them on Windows, the lines will be green, but other lines that are specific to Linux will be red. So, but if you want to see the full picture, you need to merge that into one. Or you have code that is specific to different database backends. Yeah. We have Marco in the chat, as far as I can see at least, and he will tell you from the Doctrine project, they need to test Doctrine against all the databases that are supported by Doctrine. And some of them, like I would assume most of them, are not mutually exclusive, so you can have the extensions in the same setup, but maybe you do not want that from a CI perspective and have specific jobs in your CI pipeline for the specific database backends, and then you need to merge that together into one coherent report. Boom, same problem, just a different use case. Anyway, that code is now in a much better shape than it used to be. And along the way, I rewrote the PHPCOV tool and finally wrote some documentation for it, which I always forgot to do. So hopefully that will be better now.
That one is a lot more important than some people may realize.
And PHP, I just remember that PHP Unit 13.1, which will be released at the beginning of April, will also bring hopefully, but I've said the following sentence a dozen times over the last 2 years. It will hopefully bring the final piece into PHP unit to make most of Symfony's PHP unit bridge superfluous. So I've worked a lot with the Symfony developers over the last couple of years to bring the features that are useful not only to Symfony developers, but to all PHP developers, make them generic, make them available in PHP unit. And all of that has to do with issue handling. Yeah, like e-deprecated, e-user deprecated, and things like that, to properly report that and filter. And basically filter based on, is it a deprecation in my code that is triggered by my code? Is it a deprecation in third-party code that is triggered by other third-party code? Or is it a deprecation in third-party code that is triggered by my code? Or is it a deprecation in my code that is triggered by third-party code? And it's a combinatorial explosion. And it's a nightmare to work on because it's sometimes really bizarre and obscure what types of edge cases you need to think of. But like I said, I've said this a dozen times over the last 2 years. I'm hopeful that this is the final piece that is missing from getting rid of most of what the Symfony bridge or the PHP unit bridge for Symfony is about.
That does sound very exciting. Yeah. We had a message from someone on that's watching on YouTube. I'm not going to try and pronounce that name. No offense. Just saying thank you for your involvement in everything that you've done.
Thank you for those kind words. You're very welcome.
So there was a little conversation. Unless Chris,
Marco is volunteering to rewrite PHP unit in Erlang. Go for it.
So I think we negotiated a bit after that, and we're now doing it in Zig.
I think the AI agent will not mind whether they transform the PHP code into Erlang, Rust, or Zig code.
If you ever want to have a laugh at anything that an AI produces, just ask it to do anything slightly more advanced than Hello World in assembly. It just goes, yeah, I don't know what to do with this. A bit like most assembly developers.
See, a couple of weeks ago, I wanted to find out how good that is and asked an AI agent to write a really simple routine in Motorola 68K assembly. Yeah, just turn the screen black and draw a white line that scrolls from top to bottom and back up. It confidently told me that it generated the right code. The code, sure enough, assembled correctly, and I got an Amiga binary. But when I tried to run it, it crashed.
Yeah.
So I have to say, this is the episode where I thought we wouldn't end up talking about AI, but somehow we've gone back onto AI.
Yeah, please don't.
Yeah,
I'm about to go to bed, and I don't want to have nightmares for one.
Well, let's go to something that's that fascinated me. Something you said just before we went on there. You told us about the first podcast you appeared on, and it was a board game podcast. So I can see from your background, you got, from what I can see, quite a lot of board games back there. I'm assuming they're all board games.
They are all board games, yes.
Yes, but you use them in your training.
Yes.
And I'm intrigued to hear a little bit more about that.
So once upon a time, I was at a customer on site. Way back when I used to travel a lot because I did almost all my work on site at a customer. And I was there at the company for something completely different than what I'm going to tell you about. Towards the end of the week that I was there, they said, well, we basically did everything we wanted to do or wanted to learn from you this week already. And we had not planned this, but we would really also like to get started with test-driven development. Can you show us test-driven development? And after you've shown us a little bit of it, we would like to get started on ourselves, and you coach us while we do that. And I said, sure enough, we can do that. Give me an example of what I should build, or what we should build together in test-driven development. And they blanked. They were unable to tell me something that they wanted to do, because everything they could think of from their domain, they were really sure we would not be able to do that within a day, because it was all they could think of. It was too large, too big, too complex. And I refused to do something generic. I did not want to do one of the katas or some arbitrary bland run-of-the-mill example that everyone knows. I wanted to keep it interesting, not only for myself, but also for the participants of the training. And then that's when I noticed a shelf at the back of the room, the training room we were in, and it had board games in it. And one of the games I knew. And I asked the people in the room, do all of you know that particular board game? And they all agreed, yes, we've all played it dozens of times. I said, great, then you know the rules. And that's what we're going to do here today. We are selecting a subset of the rules from that game and will implement these rules in a test-driven fashion. And I did that out of me seeing, between me seeing that game, asking the question, and deciding we are going to do this, a couple of seconds. And that worked so well that I've done that since then a couple of times. Because it is something different from the domain that the participants of such a training are used to and work in and day out, while it is still something that at least some of them are familiar with or can relate to. And it's not a simple example where you quickly lose interest because it's either boring from the topic perspective or boring from there is no challenge in implementing that. So it keeps things interesting. So I've done that with a couple of games. For like the first one that I did was Pandemic, the original Pandemic, before the pandemic. And then I did it with Clans of Caledonia. I did it with Irish Gauge and some other games. Ticket to Ride. I even used chess once because that was the only board game people knew and wanted to do. It also works.
I've done a similar thing with domain-driven development. I've used Dungeons and Dragons as the example of domain-driven development because it basically is a domain-driven development.
Yep.
The whole book just gives you the entire domain for Dungeons and Dragons.
Yep. I did that as well, not with D&D, but with the system that is the most popular one over here in Germany, because I was working with German developers and they, of course, knew the system that I played when I was a teenager way back when. Yeah.
It's one that, because the rules are so clear cut,
Yes.
it makes it so easy to demonstrate any of the domain-driven, event-driven testing. There's basically put development on the end of a word, and you can probably teach it with a board game.
Yeah, I've taught domain-driven design with a board game. I've trained test-driven development with board games. All of that works. Yes.
Interesting. Very interesting.
And once in a while, I actually get to play those games because most of the time I'm just a developer.
It's one of
Yes,
the things
well, on
that
the-
happens at tech quite a lot, isn't it? There's board games afterwards of varying different forms.
Oh yes, yeah. And both. So let me get my days right. Normally open on the Tuesday. So Tuesday and Wednesday evenings, there's normally a lot of board games going on. You normally find me in the corner playing chess with someone. There's always, I think one of the nights is generally you'll find John playing poker with a table of people. So the poker comes up. But yeah, there's all sorts of board games and things get played. John normally brings a selection, and some other people bring them all. I can't remember what ones they are. I certainly can't remember which ones were there last year because unfortunately I wasn't well, so most of the week was just a blur to me now. I don't remember any of it. Yeah, that's it. Certainly seems to be a link between developers and board games, and I love board games. And yeah, I do love trying out new games and board games. So.
Yeah, once a year I go to a board game weekend, which no longer is just a weekend because by now it starts on Thursday evening and goes all the way to Sunday. But at least 50% of the people there are developers or similar things. Yeah.
Cool.
Right.
Well, I think on that note, I think we're kind of coming to the end of today. Yeah. So thank you very much, Sebastian, for joining us and talking to us about PHP units and how we got where we are with the testing framework, which, as far as we're aware, most people use, or if they don't, they should be using it.
Yep.
And yes, again, thank you very much for joining us and giving us your time today. We'll let you go because I know it's you're wanting to get off and go to sleep. So
thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, and hopefully our paths will cross again very soon, and we'll meet up and chat some more, I'm sure.
Yep.
So thank you very much for everyone for watching or listening, however you're interacting with us, and everyone that was that participated live with us in our chat. You can always go into our Discord channel at any point. Great people are in there talking about all sorts of things in there all week long. You don't have to be there during one of our live shows. I've got my script up in front of me, so I don't know if Chris has put up the Discord link. No, he hasn't.
I haven't.
No, come on, Chris. You've got one job to do. You press buttons. Right, join us over in our Discord for the autos listeners. That is discord.phparch.com. And also, don't forget to like and subscribe on our YouTube channel. Help us get these videos out to more people. Would be great. Also, don't forget our magazine discount for all our listeners. A live 3 will get you the first 3 months free of a yearly digital subscription. I'm getting there. I can get those words out just about. And don't forget, PHP Tech is almost upon us. It's not long now. It's a matter of what? Where are we now? We're almost 8 weeks. Or is it 8? I don't know. I should have counted how many weeks away it is so we could say it. But yeah, it's not long now. If you haven't got your tickets, get your tickets, and it'll be great to see as many people there as possible. Alongside that, we've got JS Tech. So if you're a JavaScript developer or you're a PHP developer and you fancy looking at a bit of JavaScript, we've got you covered. We've got some great talks all around JavaScript running at the same time as PHP Tech. Finally, don't forget to head over to our swag store. That is store.phparch.com, where you can get all sorts of t-shirts. And maybe next time we go live, we'll actually have our t-shirts.
Maybe.
No, I don't think we'll remember.
No.
we keep saying every show that there is one particular t-shirt we both really like. We're both going to order, and we just never remember to order it. Maybe if we keep saying it enough, Eric and John will just send us one.
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't worked in 25 episodes yet.
No,
So.
not yet. No. Well, thank you very much for everyone for listening. Again, Sebastian, thank you very much for joining us. Keep up the amazing work that you do. With just not just the PHP, you're also involved in the PHP Foundation as well. And I think that is pretty much it for us. Yep. I'm just trying to find the right outro video whilst I'm talking. I can't do two things at once. But thank you very much, everyone, and we will all see you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.